All right, guys, I'm really excited to share with you today some tips on how to do a better job with your accessory work. So it can take a lot of time and really much more time than it needs to, and much more time than you have to get in what you think is good accessory work. But really, figured out how to get this done, really been taught how to get this done in get this 3 minutes. I can do full accessory work for an entire muscle group. I and I'll talk more about this later, but you should only be doing 1 to 3 of these cycles per workout. So you're talking less than 10 minutes. And I gotta tell you, if it's taken me more than 10 minutes or so to get my accessory work in, sometimes if it's taken me more than 5 minutes, I'm probably not going to do it. Uh, things come up, things come up for you just like they come up for me. Your wife is calling, your kids are calling, you got home late from work and you've only got a few minutes to get your workout in. And you need to make sure that you're going to be productive. And this is a great method to get some really good productive accessory work done. So I'm going to share a screen. This is a little bit more complicated than what you're used to, and I want to make sure that this is clear for all of you guys so you can take action. So let's jump over here. Let's go into the actual slideshow. So 3 minute targeted muscle growth. So what are we looking at here? High intensity training. You guys might have heard of this before. Mike Mentzer was a big proponent of it. There's some modern guys that I've learned from who've taught me how to use this. Drew Bays is a really great resource for this. Now, the reason I like high intensity training for my accessory work, it's incredibly efficient. For each exercise, you're only going to be doing one set to failure, and each set is going to take you roughly 60 seconds. I've read a bit of research where it looks like somewhere within the 40 to 60 second range, or sorry, 40 to 90 second range is probably optimal of continuous tension to elicit optimal muscle growth. So we're going to be shooting for about that 60-second mark per exercise that we're doing, which puts you at about 8 to 12 reps if you're using a 3030 tempo. So that means call it an overhead press. You're pressing up over the course of 3 seconds, and then you're coming back down over the course of 3 seconds. No rest. And in fact, right here, you're not necessarily going all the way down into the bottom position. But if you're bench press, you don't want to rest the bar on your chest and lose that tension. And then when you're at the top, you're not going to straighten your elbows and lock out perfectly. You're going to keep a little bit of a bent elbow. And for any exercise that you're doing, you're looking for ways to keep that continuous tension. So it's a slow tempo. If you want to slow it down even more and do a 5 second eccentric, 5 second concentric, or 5 second lower and raise, you can do that too. But then to try to hit our 60 second, then you're looking at roughly 6 reps. So, I'm probably doing, 5 to 6, 5 to 8 reps if I was going that slow. So you can play with those numbers. And it honestly doesn't really matter as long as you're using that slow controlled tempo for this. So I would say minimum you want to do 2 seconds down, 2 seconds up. But you can raise that as high as you want. Now, the reason I like to use this for accessory work only, I've done entire training cycles where all I'm doing is high intensity, full body workouts, and they work really well, but I didn't gain as much strength or really hardly any strength during my time doing that. I got stronger over the course of that workout program. I did get stronger in that specific rep range, in that specific tempo, but my max strength, trying to do, a 1 rep max deadlift or whatever your exercise of choice is, it didn't move at all. And I think if I did it long enough, I might even lose a little bit of that neural efficiency, because this is really going to do a good job training the muscles themselves, the physical tissue. Uh, but it doesn't do a whole lot to train neural efficiency, at least as well as, doing something more explosive with heavier weights. So I like to actually pair the two, and I'd recommend you do the same if you actually want to be strong. Not to say you won't get strong compared to the average person, but you're not going to maximize your strength with this. So the format of the particular superset that we're setting up, we're going to do 3 exercises here. And general rule of thumb, I will start with one isolation exercise that accentuates the contracted portion. I will then go into a compound exercise that accentuates the middle portion. And then I will do another isolation exercise that accentuates the stretch portion. And so if you're not familiar with that, every exercise has a certain sticking point, a weakest point. Basic rule of thumb here is whatever the sticking point in, if that's closer to the stretch, so on a dumbbell fly, you're stretched out here, and if you fail a fly, you're probably going to fail it at the bottom of the rep. Well, that's going to be a good stretch exercise. If it's in the mid-range, like bench press, most people have their sticking point, just a few inches off their chest, 6 inches, call it. That means that the middle portion of the bench press is being accentuated. That's the hardest part for you. And then the contraction. So the contraction, you're not necessarily going to fail so much right at the end. At least that's not the goal. But the reason I want to start with a contracted exercise, so something like a cable crossover would be a good one, sticking to that chest theme here. So I want to put these in a particular order. The contraction I want first, because in the contracted position, you're going to best be able to feel the muscle and prime the muscle. Think of this as a priming exercise. So while the second 2 exercises, I do want to go to absolute failure. With the first one, it's a little bit less important. I'm still trying to hit failure, but really what I'm shooting for is I want to feel that muscle firing, and I want to feel some of that lactic acid starting to build up in my chest. That way, I'm pre-fatigued and my mind is connected to those muscles so that when I switch over to my bench press, the chest is going to be my limiting factor instead of my shoulders or my tricep. Because I'll say, when I bench press naturally, I feel it a lot more in my tricep. My triceps tend to take over, and that's just the way my body's structured. That's, I'm sure in a history of what muscles I have trained, more ferociously over time. I'm sure that's had an impact on it as well. But what I can say for sure, whatever caused it, my triceps light up a lot more when I'm bench pressing than my chest does. So by doing that contraction first and pre-fatiguing the muscle, I'm putting more of that intention into my chest so that when I'm doing the bench press, I feel it in my chest, and my chest is what's failing. That's the limiting factor. So when I hit failure in the bench press, I'm hitting failure in my chest. And then to really finish it off, I switch to a very light dumbbell fly. And right there, when you're getting into the stretch, sometimes I said, 3-0, 3-0 tempo before, I might even do a 3-second eccentric, pause for 2 seconds or so, really feel that stretch, and then bring it back up. And I'm looking to get just a lot of tension and hold a lot of tension in the chest in that second half, the bottom half of the rep in particular. There's been a lot of word lately, and I'm sure you've heard it, on how the stretch portion of the exercise, basically the stretch half of an exercise, is the most hypertrophic part of the exercise. So even if that's not true, we're hitting all 3 of them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I, definitely feel a lot more soreness. I feel a lot more tension when I've set it up in this way. So if each one of these, let's say I hit 3-0, 3-0, and I get 10 reps, remember we're shooting for 8 to 12 reps, so right in the middle 10, this whole thing takes 3 minutes because I'm taking as little rest as possible between exercises. I have all 3 exercises set up next to each other before I even start. So, call it 4 minutes if I'm on the higher end. Now, just a few exercises. Or a few examples of exercises. I'm only going to keep this on here for a couple of seconds. You can stop, pause the video, and write some of these down if you would like to try any of these out. So like I said, pec deck, cable crossover would be good. Dumbbell chest press, flat barbell chest press, incline chest press. You can really substitute any exercise you want for these as long as they fit that designation that I gave of contraction, mid-range, and stretch. So a couple that, one that you might notice here is I put a cable row on back. Now, honestly, my favorite exercise to use for the start of this is a chest expander pull apart, either vertical or horizontal. But since most of you probably don't have that and don't have any idea what I'm talking about, stick around on the channel, and I'm going to be talking a lot about that at some point, I'm sure. But what we're looking for is an exercise where you really feel the muscle firing for that first one, where you can get a really good squeeze in a really contracted position. So for me, cable row is a great one. I always feel that a lot in my back, my upper back in particular. And you can really drive your elbows back safely and get a really good stretch on it as long as you're using an attachment that's a little bit wider. If you do the really close grip, you might not be able to get as tight of a contraction there. So it is a compound exercise, but it really squeezes hard. So it is still a great exercise to choose. So your squeeze, your midpoint, your stretch, squeeze, midpoint, stretch. For all of these, you're probably ready to jump to the next one now. So quads, hamstrings, and delts. We'll leave this up here for a couple of seconds. Is there anything I want to talk about on any of these? Oh, well, so this is just one other note. Sometimes, particularly for the third exercise, for some things I will like to put in body weight exercises. And then for those, I just go as far as I possibly can. And sometimes I do break the rule of the slow tempo on this too, occasionally. And, I might do some quick pulsing bottom position deficit push-ups is one that I do sometimes. And, I might get 30, 40 reps, but I'm moving really fast. So it's still, ends up being pretty close to that 60-second. Body weight sissy squats, those you can go slow on. Those are a great exercise. But again, that's another one where it is not actually an isolation exercise per se, but it is pretty close to. And you're going to get a really good stretch on your quads there. So some things to consider when you're programming this. One, be conscious of muscular overlap. So you are using compound exercises. Remember that. If you start off and you're doing a bench press and then you immediately go over to tricep isolation, you might want to do that to really blast the triceps, but probably what you're going to end up doing is having piss poor tricep activation because you're already so drained from using similar muscles. Back and bicep is another, really big one that I would avoid doing those at the same time. And if you're going to do it, be conscientious of which one you're doing first. So if you trash your biceps, those are already limiting factor for most people when they're doing their back exercises. So if you did biceps, then back, that's probably going to be worse for most of you than if you did back and then bicep, which isn't going to be great, but it's going to be a little bit better. Next thing, be conscientious of the systemic demand. So what I mean by that is how tired are you going to be by the exercises that you're doing? Quads are incredibly demanding, especially if you're doing, switching over to like barbell back squat, barbell front squat. Those are really demanding exercises on your energy system. If you want to specialize your quads for a month or two, probably just do your quads. Maybe you could do quads and calves, or maybe you could do quads and forearms. But really, after doing quads, hamstrings and glutes can be another one that's really demanding. Back can be another one that's really demanding. Although for most people, the back is more endurant. So you can, I will pair back and chest a lot. But, you need to see what wears you out. So, do a little experimenting, try it out. But like I said, if you're doing something really demanding, you might only have the energy to do like just the quads for a cycle. Calves, biceps, triceps, forearms, abs, not very demanding. You could probably, I say the rule is 1 to 3. You might even be able to do, all 5, or, maybe even adding in the delts, and you might be able to recover from that. But I still would say keep it to only 3. You're going to have more focus. You're going to have more available energy, more available recovery afterwards. You probably will get better results by doing calves, biceps, triceps 1 month, and then forearms, abs, delts the next month. But you know yourself better, or you have the capacity to know yourself better than anyone. So experiment, try different things, see what you like, see what works best for you. If you need help with that, I do offer training. I've been training guys since college. I, was the strength and conditioning guy for the wrestling team when I was coaching high school wrestling. I've continued to coach guys just on the side for fun since then. So I've had a lot of, I've troubleshot a lot of different guys' programs and written a lot of programs. If you need help with this, check the link in the video and set up a call. We'll see if, maybe we'd be a good fit to work together. So you're going to do 1 to 3 muscle groups per training cycle. Training cycle could be 4 weeks, it could be 12 weeks, anywhere in between. I mean, it could be a year if you have a really lacking back and you really want to build up your back. You could potentially do this for a year or longer even. But for most of you, you're probably going to want to specialize for 4 to 12 weeks and then move on to something else. Always start with your strength work. So never skip this. This is your icing. The strength work is your cake, or better yet, strength work is your steak, and this is the butter and garlic on top. You want to do this every workout, and it will be the same setup every workout. So if you're deciding to do chest and you do pec deck, and then you do dumbbell bench press, and then you do dumbbell fly, you're going to do those same 3 exercises every single workout. You're going to go to failure every single workout. And you're going to do that until you plateau. Now, what I mean by plateau is progressive overload is the measure of all growth. It is the driver of all growth. So as long as you are adding a rep or 2, or adding a little bit of weight every time you go in to do this workout, you can keep going. You're making progress. Don't cut it off early. Just keep going. But if 2 or 3 workouts in a row, you are failing to get more reps, or even worse, if you're getting less reps, you're going to have an off workout here and there. So that's why I say, unless you're backsliding and or stalling for 2 to 3 workouts in a row, just keep progressing. Once you've stalled like that, once you've plateaued, then you can start switching up exercises. And what you might do is create an A day and a B day. So you can keep doing the A exercises, the ones you have been doing, but then do 3 variations the next time you go in and alternate back and forth. And you could keep going like this until you plateau again, and then add in a 3rd day. I like doing the AB cycles or ABC cycles. If you would prefer, I don't really care. You can go ahead and just totally switch up the day, or maybe even switch to a different muscular focus. If you've been going 8 weeks making progress and then you stall out on your bench, well, switch to pull-ups, switch to a back-focused workout. Now, That is everything for this video. I am going to make another presentation like this for progressive overload because honestly, that is the most important thing for you to understand what progressive overload is, how it affects your hypertrophy, how it affects your strength, how it affects your conditioning. No matter what your goal is, if you are not engaging in progressive overload, you are not going to make progress for very long. You can stumble into a little bit of progress, but it is going to be very short-lived. So we're going to talk more about that later. For now, just a reminder again, if you want to schedule a call with me, that is in a link down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to keep providing you very time-efficient ways to progress your body so that you can continue to progress your life. There's no reason that you should be spending 6 hours a week in the gym when I can give you a 3-minute cycle, maybe 9-minute cycle if you are doing 3 different muscular variations, call it 12 minutes, including setup time. 12 minutes for your hypertrophy. That's all you need. 2, maybe 3 times a week. So you really don't have any excuses, and I will see you all later. I won't see you later. You're going to see me later. If I can figure out how to stop this. Okay, cool. All right. Deuces.